Hey everybody, my name is Lowell and welcome to the channel. So we have a reaction video for us. We've already done Ruby Ridge and we've done the Oklahoma bombing. Now we're going to do the Waco massacre. This is again from Forgotten History. I will leave their information for the YouTube channel down in the description. Definitely go and check them out. Let's jump in and let's have a look at the Waco massacre.
Most people around the world had never heard of the Branch Davidians led by the controversial, self-proclaimed prophet David Koresh until the beginning of a 51-day siege at their 77-acre
51 days. Wow.
David Koresh.
Wow.
Until the beginning of a 51-day siege at their 77-acre Mount Carmel compound in Waco, Texas, where 130 members had been residing. The Branch Davidians were an offshoot of another extreme Christian religious group called Shepherd's Rod, which was somewhat connected to the Seventh-day Adventists.
Oh.
Who was David Koresh?
I kind of remember glimpses of this. I never heard of Ruby Ridge. The Oklahoma bombing, I kind of remembered, but this one, David, I remember his first name, and Davidians. But apart from that, I don't. I think I remember a vision or a picture of somebody on the roof and the building on fire, something like that. I can't remember it. Like I said, you know, a long time ago. It's obviously just a teenager then, and it didn't. You know, living in Australia, you know, that was America. That was another world away. You know, so didn't really take much notice. But let's continue this one.
Adventists.
Okay.
Who was David Koresh? Who were the Branch Davidians? What caused the long siege resulting in so many deaths?
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, a veteran of the United States Army and Marine Corps, former history professor, book author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
The man known as David Koresh was born Vernon Wayne Howell in Houston, Texas in 1959.
Wait, David's not even his real name? Oh, come on. Okay.
His mother was 15 years old when she gave birth to him,
wow.
and Koresh's grandparents ended up raising him.
Okay.
Other students teased him for being dyslexic and gave him the nickname Mr. Retardo.
Dang.
Koresh, as he grew, was lauded for his extensive knowledge of the Bible, and he believed he could speak directly to God and prophesied about the second coming of Christ. He also gave prophecies regarding the end of the world. Federal authorities post-event claimed that he was successfully converting more than 100 people and then convinced them to live in his secluded compound near Waco.
Dang.
His fame within the cult was assured following his time preaching his version of prophetic Christianity throughout the U.S., Israel, Australia, and Great Britain.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Koresh was obsessed with rock and roll. In fact, when he was in his early 20s, he moved to Hollywood with hopes of becoming a rock star. When it didn't pan out, he moved to Waco and changed his name and reportedly began trying to attract groupies of a different kind. He had even produced t-shirts that read David Koresh, God Rocks, and continued playing in Christian bands throughout his life. His music is still available online. Koresh joined the Branch Davidians when he was 22 years old and soon became enmeshed in an affair with the group's president, Lois Roden, who was then in her 60s. Her son, George Roden, had been openly opposed to Koresh's relationship with his mother, Lois, and had apparently stated that, quote, he was destined to father a child with her, in essence breeding a new line of messiahs.
Dang.
After Lois died in 1987, Koresh tried to take control of the Branch Davidians and engaged in a power struggle against her son, George, who felt Koresh had brainwashed his mother. During this fight, the tension escalated and Roden was shot in the chest and hands. Koresh was tried for attempted murder, but after a mistrial, he was released. Those charges notwithstanding, due to tip-offs and known gun sales records, The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms believed the community had nearly 250 weapons, including semi-automatic rifles, assault rifles, shotguns, revolvers, pistols, and hundreds of grenades. The ATF wanted a search warrant on the suspicion that the Branch Davidians were modifying guns to have illegal automatic fire capability using AR-15 upper and M16 lower receivers. Former Branch Davidian Mark Brolt claimed that Koresh had, quote, M16 lower receiver parts, end quote, which, according to ATF regulations, is constructive possession of an unregistered machine gun, regulated in the Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986. The ATF also made the claim that Koresh was operating a methamphetamine lab, which would then bring in the military under the war on drugs.
See, that's the word claimed. Claimed. Did they have proof? Probably not.
Operating a methamphetamine lab, which would then bring in the military under the war on drugs, as well as the Drug Enforcement Agency, citing a drug connection based on 1, a recent delivery to the compound of chemicals, instruments, and the glassware, 2, a written testimony from a former compound resident alleging Howell had told him that drug trafficking was a desirable way to raise money, 3, several current residents who had prior drug involvement, 4, 2 former residents who were incarcerated for drug trafficking crimes, and 5, National Guard overflights and thermal images showing a hot spot inside the compound, possibly indicating a methamphetamine laboratory.
See, there's a lot of possibles, but it kind of starts to add up, doesn't it? It kind of starts to add up, but nothing is set in stone.
But inside the compound, possibly indicating a methamphetamine laboratory. On July 30, 1992, ATF agents David Aguilera and Skinner visited the ranch Davidians gun dealer Henry McMahon, who tried to get them to talk with Koresh on the phone. Koresh offered to let ATF inspect the Branch Davidians' weapons and paperwork and asked to speak with Aguilera, but Aguilera refused to speak with him. The Branch Davidian members were well known locally and supported themselves by trading at gun shows and took care to have the relevant paperwork to ensure that transactions were legal. Branch Davidian Paul Fata was a federal firearms licensed dealer and operated a retail gun business called the Mag Bag. When shipments arrived for Mag Bag, they were signed for by Fata, Steve Schneider, or Koresh. The ATF wanted to arrest Koresh for unlawful possession of destructive devices and search the 77-acre compound, and local law enforcement wanted him for statutory rape. One of the reports stated that, in addition to his passions for Armageddon and sex, according to the Los Angeles Times, he had multiple underage wives and was rumored to sexually abuse girls, having sex with children as young as 10 and 11.
Now, see, things like that change a little bit, doesn't it? You know, again, there's no 100% proof, but yikes, there's some serious accusations going on there, okay? Ooh.
Sexually abuse girls, having sex with children as young as 10 and 11.
Damn.
This was confirmed by survivors after the fact. Koresh was having sex with the underage girls of many of his followers. Some of his followers, disgusted with his personal methods and abuse of young girls, left the compound. It was reported that a few even filed complaints with local law enforcement regarding the child rapes. Texas state law enforcement officials were also involved due to the sex allegations and other charges.
Okay.
The main justification was that in May 1992, Chief Deputy Daniel Weinberg of McLennan County Sheriff's Department called the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms regarding his office being contacted by a local UPS representative regarding a report by one of their drivers. The UPS driver reported that a package he was delivering to the Branch Davidian compound had broken open, and he saw at least a half-dozen grenades. He also reported that the compound had been receiving packages from an arms dealer for several months. The objective of law enforcement was to search the premises and arrest Koresh for unlawful weapons possession, and a search warrant was issued, and the raid was planned in daylight and was to be rapid in its execution. They planned the raid on March 1st, but decided to move it up a day. On Sunday, February 28, 1993, in response to reports that the Davidians had been stockpiling illegal weapons at the Mount Carmel Center, supposedly in preparation for the end of the world. Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms drug enforcement agents raided the property. That morning of the raid, Paul Fattah and his son Kalani were already gone and on their way to a gun show in Austin. However, all surprise was lost when a KWTX TV reporter who was tipped off about the raid asked for directions from a U.S. postal mail carrier. Ironically, as luck would have it, the mail carrier was the brother-in-law of David Koresh. In a short time, the group's members were fully armed and prepared. An intense gunfight erupted, resulting in the deaths of 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians.
Wow.
The federal agents were attempting to arrest their leader, David Koresh, and the raid on the group's complex when they began to exchange heavy gunfire at the site. Officials said the Branch Davidians opened fire on the ATF agents first, which surviving members of the religious community have always denied. It's still not clear who fired the first shot. The Branch Davidian survivors claimed that the first shots came from the ATF agents outside. One reason may have been due to the accidental discharge of a weapon by an ATF agent, causing the ATF to respond with automatic weapons.
Yeah, accidental. Accidental, yeah, okay. We've heard that before. Okay.
ATF agent causing the ATF to respond with automatic weapons. Other reports claim the first shots were fired by the ATF to kill the dogs in the Branch Davidian kennel. 3 helicopters of the Army National Guard were brought in and all took incoming fire. During the first shots, Koresh was wounded, shot in the hand and the stomach.
Damn.
Within a minute of the raid's start, Branch Davidian Wayne Martin called emergency services, pleading for them to stop shooting. Martin asked for a ceasefire, and audio tapes record him saying, quote, "Here they come again. That's them shooting. That's not us." When the first gunfight ended, there were 10 casualties in total, 6 law enforcement and 4 Davidians. By the end of the shootout, 4 agents with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and 6 Branch Davidians were confirmed dead. The remaining 62 adults and 21 children who refused to leave the compound began their standoff with the government. The compound was soon surrounded by armored vehicles and more than 600 federal agents. The standoff ended when a fire engulfed the complex on April 19, 1993. Only 9 people inside survived what became known as the Waco Massacre. ATF agents had used ladders to reach the roof, hoping to enter the arms cache on the east side of the building. Others approached from the west side of the roof. 1 agent was killed and another wounded, while a 3rd agent made it over the peak of the roof, joining other agents trying to enter the armory. The window was smashed, a flashbang stun grenade was thrown in, and 3 agents entered the armory. When the last man tried to follow them, bullets came through the wall, wounding him, but he was able to reach the ladder and slide to safety. 1 agent fired his shotgun until he was hit in the head by return fire and killed. The first group of 3 agents reached the armory and then came under fire, killing 1 Davidian, with 2 of their men being wounded, with the 3rd covering their escape, and he fell off the roof but was not seriously injured. But another agent covering their escape was killed.
This is bloody chaos. What the hell?
But another agent covering their escape was killed. The firefight began losing momentum in less than an hour as the agents ran out of ammunition. Agents Steve Willis, Robert Williams, Todd McKeon, and Conway Charles LeBleu were dead. The 5 Branch Davidians killed in the raid were Winston Blake, Peter Gent, Peter Hipson, Perry Jones, Michael Schroeder, and J. Dean Wendell. 2 were killed by fellow Branch Davidians after being badly wounded. Due to the deaths, the FBI took command of placing Jeff Gemar, head of the Bureau's San Antonio field office, in charge of the siege as site commander. The FBI hostage rescue team was headed by Commander Richard Rogers, who had previously been highly criticized for his actions during the Ruby Ridge incident. At the beginning, Koresh had telephone contact with local news media, and he gave phone interviews. The FBI cut his communication to the outside world. For the next 51 days, communication with those inside was conducted solely by 25 FBI negotiators. However, Koresh was always in direct contact with the FBI negotiators who, during a total of 754 phone calls, were trying to encourage him to turn himself in. The FBI had a video recorder delivered to Koresh, and on it, he introduced his children and his wives, including several minors who claimed to have had babies fathered by Koresh. It was believed that Koresh had fathered perhaps 14 of the children with underage girls who stayed with him in the compound. Several Branch Davidians also made statements in the video. On Monday, March 8th, the Branch Davidians sent the videotape back to show the FBI that there were no hostages. All parties were there of their own free will. Outside the compound on April 1st, 9 Bradley fighting vehicles carrying M651 CS tear gas grenades and ferret rounds and 5 M728 combat engineer vehicles obtained from the U.S. Army began patrolling. It was known that the Davidians had at least 2 50 caliber machine guns, hence the AFBs being bought up. They destroyed perimeter fencing and outer buildings and crushed cars belonging to the Davidians and repeatedly drove over the grave of Branch Davidian Peter Gent, despite protests by the Branch Davidians and even the negotiators. During this time, negotiators arranged for the release of 35 Branch Davidians, including 21 children. But on April 19th, in an attempt to lure Koresh and his followers out, agents took decisive action that critics later called extreme and unwarranted. The reason was that Attorney General Janet Reno, newly appointed and with the Ruby Ridge disaster fresh in her mind, wanted an end to the standoff. This was when the FBI was brought in. ATF agents claimed that they heard shots coming from within the compound. Due to the children who had been physically and sexually abused long before the standoff, this was considered justification for launching tear gas attacks to force the Branch Davidians out of the compound. The FBI made that request to both President Bill Clinton and to Attorney General Janet Reno, who gave the green light. The cost was about $1 million a week, and Reno had had enough. She ordered the assault. The building was then rammed with tanks, and the agents launched a tear gas assault with more flashbang grenades. After more than 6 hours, no Branch Davidians had left the building, sheltering inside in an underground concrete block room called the bunker within the building, or they were using gas masks. Soon after that, the building caught fire at 3 different locations, although the actual cause of the fires are still a subject of hot debate, and during the fire, 76 Branch Davidians, including 28 children, died.
28 children. That's horrific. That is bloody horrific.
Most of the dead had fatal gunshot wounds to the head, chest, and face, authorities said, and Koresh had a gunshot wound in the middle of his forehead. Among those killed were a 13-year-old boy who was fatally stabbed in the chest and 2 other minors who suffered fatal blows to the head, according to the...
Wait, are they killing themselves? I thought it was in the fire, smoke and the flames, but killing themselves?
In the chest and 2 other minors who suffered fatal blows to the head, according to the FBI. It was sometime during the fire that the 33-year-old Koresh had died of a gunshot wound to the middle of his forehead. It remains unknown whether he killed himself or was shot by someone else. But that's not the only unanswered question when it comes to the infamous siege. Here are some other debates around and other little-known facts about the Waco siege and David Koresh. The questions were who shot first and who was responsible for the fire. David Thibodeau, one of only 9 Branch Davidian members to survive the fire, told Time magazine that he believed the dead Branch Davidians were shot by the FBI. Thibodeau said he firmly believed that nobody inside the complex would have started the flames. However, the FBI claimed that no law enforcement officer had fired a single bullet since the initial shootout, which may in fact be true. Thibodeau also said it's also likely some of the Branch Davidians may have shot each other to prevent a slower, more painful death in the fire. Spin magazine journalist Darcy Steinke, who covered the standoff as it was happening, later told the magazine, quote, She felt the government was to blame for how things went down. I think it was the government's fault. Koresh jogged every day at the same time on the same route before the siege. And so, if they wanted to take him, they could have just pulled up in a police car and arrested him. It was insane to come to the compound of an obviously unstable person who you know has a ton of weapons with heavily armed ATF agents. The Justice Department stated that the 51-day standoff at the Branch Davidian compound was unprecedented in the annals of American law enforcement. Never before have so many heavily armed and totally committed individuals barricaded themselves in a fortified compound in a direct challenge to lawful federal warrants. It was also believed the government wasn't fully informed about Koresh and his followers before they decided to confront the group so aggressively. The Davidians were exactly what you'd expect them to be if you knew their theology and had done any research beforehand, but if the FBI had known what they were all about before they started, they would have never done the raid. It was a botched deal. The FBI has since reformed its tactical methods when dealing with standoffs. The final Justice Department report found that negotiators criticized the tactical commanders for undercutting negotiations. David Koresh and the majority of his followers perished, although his prophecy was unfulfilled. The sun didn't blacken, nor the moon turn red. The world did come to an end, just as their prophet had promised, stated Times' Nancy Gibbs as she wrote that article. The group didn't completely die out after the Waco debacle. 9 Davidians escaped the fire, and the group still hasn't completely dissolved. A new group formed called Branch, the Lord Our Righteousness, created a new compound in the old Waco space. They have a new leader. Some Davidians were still meeting regularly for Bible study in 2013, and some believed Koresh might return from the dead to lead them again. David came to give us a message and a hope, one survivor, Sheila Martin, said, and told People magazine, "We hope to see him again. Our regret is only that we didn't serve God better." It was proven that the Davidians were well stocked with small arms numbering 305 firearms, including semi-automatic AK-47s and AR-15s, with some 46 semi-automatic firearms modified to fire in fully automatic mode, and many shotguns, revolvers, pistols, 2 HK SP-89s, and 2 M11s. The Texas Rangers reported that there were at least 16 AR-15 rifles, 2 AR-15 lower receivers modified to fire in fully automatic mode, 39 auto-sear devices used to convert semi-automatic weapons to automatic weapons fire, parts for fully automatic AK-47 and M16 rifles, 30-round magazines, and 100-round M16 and AK-47 magazines and ammunition pouches. They located grenade launchers, parts, flare launchers, gas masks, and chemical warfare suits, night vision equipment, hundreds of practice hand grenade hulls, and components, including...
So, if they had all of that, and they were under siege for 51 days, why didn't they use any of it? Why didn't they use any, force the government back? Why didn't they use any of it? Okay.
Night vision equipment, hundreds of practice hand grenade hulls and components, including more than 200 inert M31 practice rifle grenades, more than 100 modified M21 practice hand grenade bodies, 250 caliber machine guns, 219 grenade safety pins, and 243 grenade safety levers found after the fire, Kevlar helmets and bulletproof vests, 88 lower receivers for the AR-15 rifle, and approximately 21 sound suppressors, or silencers. The Davidians who surrendered were charged, and after a 2-month trial, were convicted on most counts, but the jury acquitted 4 of the Branch Davidians on all charges. Additionally, the jury acquitted all the Branch Davidians on the murder-related charges, but convicted 5 of them on lesser charges, including aiding and abetting the voluntary manslaughter of federal agents. 8 Branch Davidians were convicted on firearms charges. Those who were convicted and received sentences of up to 40 years were Kevin A. Whitecliff, convicted of voluntary manslaughter and using a firearm during a crime.
Dang.
Jaime Castillo, convicted of voluntary manslaughter and using a firearm during a crime. Paul Gordon Fata, convicted of conspiracy to possess machine guns and aiding Branch Davidian leader David Koresh in possessing machine guns. Renos Lenny Abram, a British national, convicted of voluntary manslaughter and using a firearm during a crime. Graham Leonard Craddock, an Australian, convicted of possessing a grenade and using or possessing a firearm during a crime. Brad Eugene Branch, convicted of voluntary manslaughter and using a firearm during a crime. Livingstone Fagan, a British national, convicted of voluntary manslaughter and using a firearm during a crime. Ruth Riddle, a Canadian, convicted of using or carrying a weapon during a crime. Catherine Schroeder, sentenced to 3 years after pleading guilty to a reduced charge of forcibly resisting arrest. 6 of these people appealed, and the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit vacated the sentences for the use of machine guns, determining that the district court had made no finding that they had actively employed the weapons, but left the remaining verdicts intact. The appeals went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, who reversed the decision, holding that the term machine gun in the relevant statute created an element of the offense to be determined by a jury rather than a sentencing factor to be determined by a judge, as had happened in the trial. About 100 relatives of those killed or wounded and survivors filed lawsuits against Texas and the federal government, but all of these cases were eventually dismissed. So, what do you think of this story? Did the government overreact? Did they apply the best methods for reducing the problem? Or were the Branch Davidians themselves totally responsible for the outcome? Do you believe the government reports or what the Branch Davidians had to say about the event? Let us know in your comments. We would like to hear from you.
Thank you for watching Forgotten History. Please click like, subscribe, and share. Send us comments and show ideas, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time.
Man, some of those accusations are thrown out, child sex and all that kind of stuff, and, firearm and, nothing 100% proven, obviously witness statements and whatever else. But, I don't know. Heavy-handed from the government. I mean, if you're bringing in tanks and stuff, maybe. Helicopters and everything else, Jesus, it's like, But I don't think anybody on either side helped themselves, So, first off, having a gunfight and all this kind of stuff and killing people on either side. But it's that thing that when, how much of those government accusations were real, I mean, you have to investigate, obviously, but do you investigate with, a small army? It's just, it got out of hand. It got very, very messy very, very quickly. And then the other big question is, well, who did start the fire? And were they killing themselves in there, instead of giving themselves up? I don't know. When you hear that 28 children, you just think, oh, that is horrific. That is horrific. You can understand the adults. That's their choice. If they want to be there, that's their choice. Children, man, come on. You got to save the children, when you hear about it, the more you hear about it, and you go, oh, this is getting ridiculous. What is going on? 51 days. But that was my other question. If they had all this armory, there's rocket launchers and, 50 cows and stuff, it's like, well, why didn't they use any of it? Why didn't they employ that? If they got so desperate, they're shooting each other, in a fire, why not just go, what, stuff it. Let's use all those weapons we have. We have an arsenal down here. Why not use it? I guess we'll never really know who started the fire, who shot first. Maybe David and his cult, for lack of a better term, didn't do themselves any favor, but the government certainly didn't help, either side. As I said, either side took it to 100 straight away, you know. So 55 negotiators, was it 55 or 21, whatever it was, for the government, you know, couldn't talk them down. You know, it's just like, dang, this was horrific. You know, you start with Ruby Ridge, and then you escalate to Waco, and then obviously, you know, we found that, you know, the bombing in OK was in retaliation of this. You know, two wrongs definitely don't make a right. That is for sure. That was a horrific situation as well, but it's just one of those things that either side weren't right in this case at all. You know, whatever the charges were, whatever they thought they were going to go in for, David and his fellows didn't help themselves at all. You know, so I guess it's that thing about, you know, how much can the government come onto your property and all that kind of stuff. But when you start slinging out accusations like that, you know, minor brides and all this kind of stuff is just like, oh, that's a very messy situation. So, but horrific to listen to. 28 children. Oh, it's just like, oh man, come on. That is not easy to listen to. So, dark day in American history, that is for sure. So let me know if you enjoyed that. As I said, go check out Colin and his Forgotten History. I'll leave the link for this video down in the description, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you stay safe, and I'll definitely see you in the next reaction video.
Oh, you're still here? You want more content? Why don't you check out my Patreon down here? You'll get plenty more content and some exclusive videos over there too. If not, why not check out this one over here?